There was a time when investors trusted Warren Buffett's gut. Now their trust may need to be found. The lesson? Even the best investors are only humans. Buffett says that a stock market is the aggregate of their participants' hopes, dreams, fears, and disappointments. I don't know about you, but I am exhausted by the never-ending game of Buffett or not Buffett. You don't have to be an investor. What stock Warren Buffett has been buying? It's actually in his portfolio. Welcome back to the Ring of Knowledge, your trusted source of practical financial knowledge. In this video, we'll analyze the portfolio of Berkshire Hathaway's latest portfolio based on their recent SEC filings from Q3 2022. So let's get started. Changes have been made to the equity holdings of Berkshire Hathaway. For one thing, the investing arm of Berkshire Hathaway has developed a preference for growth projects. Even if companies like American Express and Coca-Cola are still notable in the portfolio, Buffett and his partners have shown interest in up-and-coming companies like Apple and Amazon, as well as in less-known businesses like Snowflake and New Holdings. Perhaps most unexpectedly, Berkshire Hathaway began amassing a significant position in Taiwan Semiconductor during the third quarter of 2022. Not many anticipated Warren Buffett amassing a significant interest in the world's largest pure-play semiconductor foundry. Buffett has done just that. When Warren Buffett was running Berkshire, the company had a stake in Intel. Nevertheless, the experience left him with a sour taste, and he quickly sold off the ownership. Chip stocks have never indeed been his preferred type of investment. However, one thing that has remained the same is Buffett's propensity for keeping a pretty concentrated portfolio. The value of Berkshire Hathaway's portfolio is determined by its 5 most valuable holdings, which account for 75% of the total. The top 10 make up 87% of the total. It doesn't matter if we're discussing Berkshire Hathaway's most significant investments or the dozens of stocks it holds on the sidelines. In fact, following a year in which Berkshire was a net seller of equities, the company was a net purchase of stocks to the tune of $45 billion during the first 6 months of 2022. Most recently, Berkshire spent a net of $3.6 billion on stock purchases during the third quarter, which ended on September 30th. At the start of the year 2020, Buffett held airline equities. He does not at this time. At the beginning of 2020, Buffett's stocks in the banking industry were among the best. However, Berkshire has spent most of the past 2.5 years getting rid of them. And it seems only yesterday that Buffett was an eager buyer of particular medicinal brand names. The majority of those positions had been terminated as well. Buffett's optimistic outlook on the stock market for 2022 has stayed the same. The first 9 months of the year for the S&P 500 were the worst they've been in decades. Naturally, the most successful long-term investor in the world took advantage of the market downturn to purchase shares of stock at ever more attractive prices. Buffett and his senior officials initiated positions in 3 companies: Taiwan Semiconductor, Jefferies Financial Group, and Louisiana Pacific, added to Berkshire's stakes in 4 firms, and reduced exposure to 5 holdings, most notably US Bancorp, and completely exited one position, STOR Capital. Form 13F company statement that Berkshire Hathaway made with the Securities and Exchange Commission on November 14. Berkshire invested over $9 billion in the stock market during the third quarter, with approximately a third of the money going toward the oil corporations Occidental Petroleum Corporation and Chevron Corporation. The year's first 9 months saw Berkshire spend $66 billion buying equities. That is more than 13 times what it spent over the same period in 2021. Berkshire ended up seizing tiny windows of opportunity to buy energy stocks when they were trading down from the recent highs. This decision has proven to be prescient, given how energy stocks have soared once again. In August, a share of Occidental Petroleum was worth $75.26. It was the inflated price it had been all year at the time. Then in the last week of September, Berkshire bought nearly 6 million more Occidental shares at prices ranging from $57.91 to $61.38. It couldn't have happened at a better time. Once again, an Occidental share is worth more than $70 now. During the third quarter, Berkshire also bought more shares of Chevron. In 2022, energy stocks have gone up by a lot. United Parcel Service. United Parcel Service, or UPS, continues to constitute a teeny-tiny portion of Berkshire Hathaway's share portfolio, despite the passage of yet another fiscal quarter. Although it is the largest delivery firm in the world, Warren Buffett's investment in the company's stock has been very tiny for some time. It is only holding on by a thread, but it has been doing so for a considerable time, for the better part of 20 years to be exact. It would be challenging to find. This investment is considered a rump position, leftovers, or an odd lot because it has fewer than 60,000 shares. It is, without a doubt, a lower amount of what Buffett began with. During the first quarter of 2006, Berkshire Hathaway's stock holdings were expanded with the acquisition of 1.43 million UPS shares, valued at around $113.5 million at the time of the transaction. That works out to a price per share of $79.38 on average. But Berkshire Hathaway's investment in UPS never became a significant portion of the company's overall holdings, and Warren Buffett has steadily reduced the size of his holdings in the company over the years to the point where it would not be surprising if he sold his share of the company at any time in the future. In addition, he has maintained his customary silence regarding the matter at hand. Specifically, he has not mentioned United Parcel Service. The Oracle of Omaha made big moves in the third quarter. Investors are given a glimpse behind the curtain of some of the world's largest and most successful hedge funds and asset managers thanks to a regulation known as the Form 13F, which mandates that fund managers with at least $100 million in assets must publicly disclose their stock holdings to the United States Securities and Exchange Commission every quarter. The quarterly report that Buffett and his firm, Berkshire Hathaway Inc., which is currently worth $684 billion, will likely be one of the most closely watched. During the third quarter, the Oracle of Omaha made many significant adjustments to Berkshire's investment portfolio. Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Co. The semiconductor foundry Taiwan Semiconductor was the most surprising revelation in Berkshire's 13F filing for the third quarter. Before Berkshire's filing on November 14th, Taiwan Semiconductor shares had dropped by 39.5% so far this year. This decline can be attributed to a struggling global semiconductor market. The mood of investors in semiconductor stocks took a hit in October after the United States Department of Commerce imposed new limits on the export of sophisticated chips to China. Buffett views geopolitical unpredictability as a chance to make purchases. During the third quarter, Berkshire acquired a brand new investment in TSM by purchasing more than 60 million shares of the company's stock, currently valued at over $4.1 billion. Activision Blizzard Inc. Microsoft Corporation made public in January its intention to acquire video game producer Activision Blizzard in a transaction valued at $68.7 billion, or $95 per share. At the time, investors in Berkshire Hathaway were unaware that Warren Buffett's company had acquired roughly $1 billion worth of Activision Blizzard shares at an average price of approximately $77 in the weeks before the announcement of the merger. Over 8.2 million Activision shares were sold by Berkshire by the end of the third quarter, reducing Warren Buffett's merger arbitrage wager. Berkshire currently has 60.1 million shares of ATVI stock, with a value market of around $4.5 billion. Occidental Petroleum Corp. When Berkshire helped finance Occidental's $38 billion acquisition of Anadarko Petroleum, Buffett has been an investor in Occidental and holds a share in the company. The most recent 13F filing that took place this week indicated that Berkshire's investment in Occidental has increased to more than 194.4 million shares and is currently valued at approximately $11.9 billion. This places Oxy stock as Buffett's sixth largest stock holding. Plus, Berkshire possesses 83.9 million warrants that can be exchanged for Occidental common stock for $59.62 per share. Bank of New York Mellon Corp. Bank of New York Mellon operates under the unique business model of a trust bank, which includes cash management for significant investment funds, general corporate funding, and fixed income clearing. The term day-to-day funding encompasses all of these mandates. Instead of taking on credit risk by issuing risky loans, the bank prefers to profit from transaction fees. In the third quarter of 2010, Buffett has made his first investment in BK stock. However, he sold off almost 14% of his shares in the same period. Although Berkshire has sold off some of its stock, it still holds around 62.2 million shares. Paramount Global. The corporation is the owner of the television and film studios of Paramount Pictures, television networks like CBS and Comedy Central, and the streaming platforms Paramount Plus, Showtime OTT, and Pluto TV. Another of Buffett's classic value investments, Paramount, is trading at a multiple of just 14.5 times anticipated earnings and 0.4 times revenues. During the third quarter, Berkshire's holdings in Paramount were boosted by 16%, bringing the total to more than 91.2 million shares with a value of around $1.7 billion. The current ownership of around 13% of Paramount by Berkshire makes it the largest shareholder in the company. STOR Capital Corp. Buffett sold all of his STOR interests during the third quarter, which resulted in a disposal of 6.9 million shares of the REIT with a total value of approximately $181 million. STOR is the owner of single-tenant properties, including companies like gyms, movie theaters, restaurants, and other establishments severely affected by the pandemic. In 2017, Buffett made his initial investment in the company. STOR Capital is a real estate investment trust holding single-tenant buildings. The trust operates under a net lease business model. Sadly, a significant percentage of the store's rental income comes from restaurants, health clubs, movie theaters, and other companies adversely impacted by the pandemic. Jefferies Financial Group, Inc. After seeing a surge in investment banking in 2021, Jefferies shares have performed well despite the challenging climate investment banks have faced in 2022, with a decrease of just 2.9% this year as of November 15th. Compared to other Berkshire investments, Buffett's purchase of 433,000 new shares of Jeff stock during the third quarter represents a relatively modest $12.8 million outlay of capital. On the other hand, investors should not be astonished if Buffett adds to his investment in Jefferies following the fourth quarter or beyond. U.S. Bancorp. Buffett has placed significant wagers on bank stocks for most of his career. Berkshire eventually sold off its last remaining shares of Wells Fargo and Company during the first quarter of 2022. This came after more than 20 years of holding the stock, which means that U.S. Bancorp is now Berkshire's longest-running bank stock holding. Buffett also engaged in a substantial amount of selling in 2022. After selling off what remained of Berkshire's interests in Wells Fargo, Oracle's longest-held bank investment is now U.S. Bancorp. Nonetheless, he may be losing interest in the firm. When the fourth quarter of 2021 rolled around, Buffett owned 126 million shares in USB, but when the third quarter of 2022 arrived, that number had dropped to 77 million. During the pandemic, major energy companies worldwide drastically cut their capital investments. As a result, the supply of oil, gas, and natural gas liquid will likely be scaled up in a meaningful amount sometime soon. In addition, Russia's invasion of Ukraine has jeopardized several European countries' supplies of essential energy commodities. In other words, supply restrictions make it highly likely that crude oil and natural gas prices will continue to be substantially higher than usual. Plus, Buffett and his business partners have invested their capital in two integrated oil and gas corporations, Occidental and Chevron, respectively. Drilling typically results in the most significant increase in operating profit for integrated energy corporations. However, they also operate midstream, such as transmission pipelines and downstream assets like chemical plants and refineries. If spot prices for crude oil or natural gas drop, having assets in both the midstream and downstream stages of the production process can provide a cash flow hedge for an integrated model. Existing shareholders' ownership of Berkshire Hathaway stock is increased in a manner that is both gradual and consistent. Buy and hold investors end up with more extensive ownership in the company over time because retiring shares through buybacks make them more significant stakeholders. Buybacks of company stock have a strong propensity to boost earnings per share (EPS) for businesses that maintain or expand their income. Greater earnings per share can make a company's stock more appealing to investors because there are fewer shares outstanding into which to divide the company's net income. The culture that Warren Buffett has established at Berkshire Hathaway is one in which he is prepared to take a risk, as is Buffett himself. Buffett has positioned his company to capitalize on protracted periods of economic growth by investing the majority of Berkshire Hathaway's portfolio in cyclical businesses and owning over 6 enterprises in this sector. So that's all for today's video. If you like this video, click the like and the bell buttons. We'll have another video for you soon.